We continue now at the top of Daf Dalet Amud Beis in Meseches Bava Kamma. This is Bava Kamma Daf 4b. The Gemara continues its statement, Hachanami here also, Tani Adam Shmiras Gufo Olav, again in the Mishnah. When it says Adam, it doesn't mean Ushmirasan Alecha. Ushmirasan Alecha sounds like you're watching something else, something that the person is obligated to watch, like he's obligated to watch his shore. That's not what it means by Adam. If Adam is in the Mishnah, as Rav says, the way you should understand it is Adam Shmiras Gufo Olav, and a person has to watch himself. Rashi says, Hachanami Tani Adam Shmiras Gufo Olav, V'haidika Tani Ushmirasan Alecha. When it says Ushmirasan Alecha, Ashara, that's going on the other items that are doing damage, but when it comes to a person, of course, it's Shmiras Gufo Olav, the person has to watch himself. And the Gemara continues, Maskif lo Rav Mori. Rav Mori asks a question, V'ema mave zehamayim. Why don't we say that mave refers to water? K'dechsiv, as it's written in the pasuk, this is a pasuk in Yeshayahu, the pasuk says, Kikdoach eish hamosim mayim tiva eish. And so you see the word mayim by tiva, so it sounds like it's talking again, it sounds like mave might be mayim, might be water. Rashi says, Ema mave zehamayim shem shofech adam meim of lirush hasaravim. The idea would be if a person would spill his water, pour his water into Rosh Hashanah, uva'acher v'nitnat for kelev, and a person would come, someone would come, and his clothing would become dirty from that water. Chayev hashofchan, the person who poured the water would be chayev. Maybe that's what the Mishnah means when it says mava, again based on this pasuk in Yeshayahu. Kekdoach eish hamosim kimosho eish sorev davar hanimas. What the pasuk means to say is just like fire can melt something, kagon zefes v'shayva v'chol minei revav, like let's say like wax, or let's say other kinds of fats. Mayim tiva eish. So the pasuk goes on to say that mayim tiva eish means uchemayim shemevavim eso eish. It's like water, which the fire causes a bubbling when you have fire and water. Kishanosin mayim alo eish, when you put water on fire. Nasim kamin avabuos, again it's like bubbles. Harasichos, it's like boiling. V'seiva dekra hachihu, and the end of the pasuk is as follows: Lahodia shimcha litzarecha, to make known your name to your enemies, and it means to say kain todia shimcha litzarecha kishetovdim min ha'olam. So too your name will be known to your enemies when you cause them to be destroyed from the world. And the Gemara continues and answers, Michsiv mayim nivu. The pasuk doesn't say mayim nivu. If it said mayim nivu, then the word nivu, mave, would be going on mayim. Tiva esh ksiv, the way it's phrased, is tiva esh. And Rashi explains, Michsiv mayim nivu. Does it say mayim nivu? Loshen rabim. That would be a language of plural. Dilahave mashma de mava amayim koi. Then the word mava would be going on mayim. Shehin mevavin eso esh. They cause the fire to bubble. Tiva esh ksiv. But it doesn't say that. It says the fire is the one that's tiva. Demashma sho esh mevave hamayim. It sounds like the fire is causing the water to bubble. The tiva loshen yachid v'loshen nekeva, because tiva is a singular and it's also feminine, and therefore again it's going on esh. But the Gemara continues, if that's the case, if it's tiva eish and the mav is going on eish, maskif lo Rav Zvid, so Rav Zvid asks, ve'ema mav zeha eish. Why don't we say in the Mishnah that mav refers to fire? Dechiksiv tiva be'eshu dechsiv, because it says tiva, it's referring to eish, it's referring to fire. But the Gemara, of course, says that can't be. Ihachi, if so, mai ha-mava ve'ahever. If so, what does it mean in the Mishnah when it says mava and hever? Hever clearly is eish already, so mava must be something else. V'chitema prushe kamafarish. And if you're going to say that the Mishnah is explaining, is defining mave. What is hamave? Mave is hever. But that can't be. Ihachi, if so, arba, it shouldn't say there are 4 avos nezikin. Shloshav, it's only 3 avos nezikin, because mav and hever are the same thing. V'chitem, and if you're going to say tana shor di ispei tarti, maybe you'll say shor, that includes multiple items, and so therefore you still do have 4 if shor actually counts as 2 things. But the Gemara says to that, Ihachi, but if so, the Mishnah still wouldn't make sense, because the Mishnah goes on to say, Lo zeh v'zeh sheyesh ben ruach chayim. It says this and this, which are things which have life. Mav is one of those things which has life. If mav is eish my ruach chayim ispe, what life does eish have? Fire doesn't have any life, so that line wouldn't make sense if mava was eish. V'sum mai kaharei eish. Furthermore, it goes on to say, like fire, meaning zeh v'zeh sheyesh ben ruach chayim are not like eish. And so therefore, again, it's clear that mava is not eish. And Rashi says, the ispei tarti, again, when it comes to shore, there are 2 of them, shein v'regel. The Mishnah is referring specifically to shein and regel. The karen lo kachashav. The idea would be the karen is not among the count over here. The v'tamin lo kamairi, because we're not talking about things that become tam and then muad. We're talking only about things that are muad. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Tani Ravoshia taught Shlosha Asar Avos Nazikin. There are actually 13 categories of damages, and they are as follows: Shomer Chinam v'Hashoel. Shomer Chinam is somebody who watches something for free; he doesn't get paid. He's an unpaid watchman. V'Hashoel, a shoel is a borrower. Nosei Sacher is somebody who's paid to watch something. V'Hasocher, and a renter. And then we have Nezik Tsar v'Ripoy Sheves and Boshes. That's the amount you pay for damages and for pain and for healing and for the time off from work and for humiliation. V'Arba Demasisin, and then you add the 4 Avos Nazikin in our Mishnah. Hatzleisar, that comes out to 13. And the Gemara continues, V'tana didon, but what about the Tana of our Mishnah, my time malotani hani? Why doesn't our Mishnah say there are 13? Why is it only 4? And the Gemara says, B'shlam l'Shmuel, we understand according to Shmuel, B'nizke mamon kamayri, because our Mishnah is only dealing with when the person's objects that he owns are causing the damage. B'nizke gufo lo kamayri, but our Mishnah is not talking about when the person directly causes the damage, because again, according to Shmuel, Mave is not Adam. Adam is not in the Mishnah. Ela l'Rav, but according to Rav, that Adam is in the Mishnah. So listening, so then we should learn these as well. We should learn a total of 13 like Rav Oshia. And the Gemara says to that, Tana Adam v'chol mili da Adam. Once Adam's already in the Mishnah, so it includes everything that can happen and everything that's related to damages from man. And the Gemara says, Rav Oshia nami, but according to Rav Oshia also, Hatani le Adam, isn't Adam already in the Mishnah? So why is it that you're adding on and saying there are 13? And the Gemara says, Trei gavnei Adam, and the Gemara says there are 2 kinds of Adam. Tana Adam da'azik Adam, the Tana teaches about a man who damages another man. V'tana Adam da'azik shor, and then it also teaches about a man who damages an ox or other kinds of property. And that's the idea over here when you have situations of nezik, tsar, ripoy, sheves, and boshes. That's all talking, for example, about a person damaging another person. And the Gemara continues, Ihachi, if so, shor nami, when it comes to a shor as well, lisni trei gavne shor, we should teach 2 different kinds of shor. Lisni shor da'azik shor, we should talk about an ox that damages another ox. But lisni shor da'azik adam, we should also teach about a shor, about an ox that damages a person. And the Gemara says, Hi, my, what kind of comparison are you making over here? Bishlama adam da'azik shor, I understand if a person damages an ox, nezik hu d'mishalim. So the payment is nezik, the payment is damage. And adam da'azik adam, and when a man damages a man, mishalim arba devarim, so he pays the extra 4 of the tsar, ripoy, sheves, and boshes, so those are different, they would be listed differently. Ela shor, but when it comes to an ox doing damage, mali shor da'azik shor, what's the difference if a shor damages a shor? Mali shor da'azik adam, what's the difference if the shor damages a person? Edi v'edi nezik hu d'mishalim, the payment is always the same, you're always paying nezik, and therefore it wouldn't make any sense to make such a distinction, but it does make sense to make that distinction when it comes to adam. But the Gemara says still this answer is not satisfactory in terms of what Rav Oshia taught, in terms of his 13 categories. Why? Because some of those categories are not talking about man that damages man. I understand when you're talking about Sa'ar, Ripoy, Sheves, and Boshes, that's Adam da'azik Adam, so he's adding something. But when it comes to Shomer Chinam, Shoel, Nosei Sachar, Socher, these people who are watchmen, borrowers, renters, so there, in those situations, the Adam da'azik Shoru, that's also a person that is damaging an ox, meaning to say that's also a person that is damaging property. Vikatani, and yet that is listed. Rav Oshia adds that. Why does he add it? That should just be included within Adam. And the Gemara answers to that, Tani Hezeka Divyadayim, we want to teach about damage that happens actively, meaning to say you actually go up against an object and cause damage, break the object, etc. The katani has zeka to memela, but then there's also a kind of damage that happens memela when a person is a watchman, let's say, and he doesn't watch properly, so he's not actively damaging the item, he's just not watching it properly, and then it gets damaged or it gets lost, etc. So we want to teach that as well. That's why Rav Oshia adds those categories of damage. And the Gemara continues, Tani Rabbi Chia taught Esrem v'Arba Avos Nazikin. There are actually 24 categories of damages, and they are as follows: Tashlumei Kefil v'Tashlumei Arba v'Chamisha. When a person has to pay double, or a person has to pay 4 or 5 times the amount, that's talking about in situations of Geneva, in situations of stealing. V'Ganav v'Gazlan, then you have a Ganav and a Gazlan. A Ganav is one who steals in private, secretly. A Gazlan is one who goes right up to somebody and steals from him right out in the open. Edim Zomamin and false witnesses. False witnesses are also causing a kind of damage. V'ha'ones v'ha'mefato motzi shemra, also a person who rapes, or a person who seduces, or a person who's motzi shemra. Motzi shemra refers to somebody who says that a woman that he marries, let's say, is not a basula, but that's a false charge against her. She actually was a basula. V'hametame, and somebody who causes someone else's truma to become tamei. V'hamedamei, or he mixes the truma with chulin, with non-truma, that causes a kind of damage. V'hamenasech, or somebody who pours someone else's wine to avodah zarah, that causes a loss of the wine. And then v'hani tleiser, then you have the 13 that Rav Oshia mentioned, ha'esrim v'arba, so that comes out to a total of 24. And the Gemara continues, Rabbi Yoshia, my time tani hani, but Rabbi Yoshia, why didn't he add in the ones that Rav Chia added? And the Gemara answers to that, b'mamona kamairi, because Rav Oshia is talking about situations where you're paying mammon, you're paying for the actual damage, b'knasa lo kamairi, but we're not talking about situations where you pay a fine. Kefil, when a person pays double for stealing, or when he pays 4 or 5 times the amount, that is a kind of a fine. When you're talking about ones, mafata, motzi shemra, those are all kinds of fines. And the Gemara says, but ganav and gazlan, but what about ganav and gazlan, just the regular payment for stealing? To mamonahu, that's mammon, and that's not really a fine. Why doesn't Rabbi Oshia learn that as well? Listening, that should be taught as well. And the Gemara says to that, Hakatani le shomer chinam v'hashoel. Well, he's already taught shomer chinam and a shoel, and shomer chinam and a shoel essentially include somebody who steals. The shomer chinam doesn't watch it properly. That can be in the category of stealing, and the same with a shoel as well. And Rashi explains, Ganav hamoda me'atzma, if a Ganav admits to what he did, he doesn't pay that fine of double, he just pays for what he stole. Again, that Rav Oshia should teach because it's not a knas, it's not a fine. The Gazlan de lo mashalmi el keren, and also a Gazlan never pays more than the keren, he only pays the principal, the amount that he stole, Lisni. So again, Rav Oshia should add those as well. And the Gemara said to that, Tanale shomer chinam v'hashoel, that's already included in shomer chinam and shoel. To hasam nami shayach geneva, because when a person is a shomer chinam or a shoel, that includes geneva. For example, kagon shatoan shenignav heimenu. For example, let's say the shomer chinam would claim that it was stolen from him. He's trying to get out of having to pay. V'arei biyad, but really he still has it, so that would be a kind of stealing. V'yamrinu in Perek Meruba, we say in Perek Meruba later on, the toin tainas ganav keganav, somebody who claims that a ganav took it from him, he's like a ganav of himself, v'toin tainas gazlan kegazlan, and somebody who claims that a gazlan took it from him, he himself is considered to be like a gazlan. That would be true all by a shomer chinam. When a shomer chinam claims it was stolen, he's getting himself out of any obligation. Now Rashi notes over here, why are we mentioning shoel over here? A shoel is actually responsible for geneva. So lav dafka, Rashi says that's lav dafka. Because we don't actually find that a shoel is able to make himself exempt from payment if he says something like that. Lo betoin tainas ganav, lo betoin tainas gazlan. If he says that it was stolen from him by a ganav or a gazlan, that wouldn't hurt. That wouldn't help. Shareu chayev bekulo, because a shoel is actually chayev in everything. So really, what we're focusing on over here in this answer is shomer chinam. And the Gemara continues, Rabbi Chia nami, but Rabbi Chia also, who did learn these as extra avos nazikin hatanale shomer chinam v'hashoel. You already have shomer chinam v'hashoel. Why do you add on ganav and gazlan as well? And the Gemara answers to that, Tani Mimona to Asili Yade Beheter. Rabbi Chia wants to learn situations where you have to pay mammon, where originally the money came to you beheter. A shomer chinam, he was given the object. He didn't take it away from anyone. He was supposed to watch over it. V'katani Mimona to Asili Yade Besura. But then we also want to talk about mammon, where it came to the person in a forbidden manner, where a person actually stole the item in the first place. And Rashi explains the Asili Yade Beheter shomer chinam. When it comes to shomer chinam, Afagav dahashta toin tainas ganav shenignav himenu. Even though right now he's lying and claiming it was stolen from him, but when he originally got the item, he got it behetera. There was nothing wrong. He was given the item to watch over. But when it comes to a ganav and gazlan, they got the item initially beisser in a prohibited fashion because they stole it. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Hey Amud Aleph.